There's a moment most people over 60 will recognize. It happens quietly, without warning. You reach for something on a shelf, or you step off a curb, or you turn around too quickly. And for just a fraction of a second, your body doesn't respond the way it used to. Your foot hesitates, your core tightens, and something deep inside you whispers a question you weren't quite ready to hear. Is this how it starts? That moment, that tiny flicker of doubt, that is what we're talking about today. Not in a way that frightens you, but in a way that finally gives you the truth, and more importantly, a real path forward. Because what most people don't realize is this: losing your balance after 60 is not simply a fact of aging. It is not inevitable. It is not written into your DNA like the color of your eyes. And the doctors, the physical therapists, the longevity researchers who have spent decades studying why some people remain steady and strong well into their 80s, they have found something that quietly changes everything. It is not a pill. It is not an expensive program. It is not something you need a gym membership or a physical therapist's office to do. It is a habit, a single, simple daily habit. And once you understand why it works, once you feel what it does to your body, you may wonder why nobody told you sooner. Stay with us, because this gets more interesting the deeper we go. Let's start with something most people get completely wrong about balance. When we think about falling or about feeling unsteady, we tend to think about our feet, or maybe our inner ear, perhaps our vision. And yes, all those things play a role. But researchers at the University of Southern California studying mobility in adults over 60 discovered something that shifted their understanding entirely. The real command center for your balance isn't in your feet. It isn't even in your inner ear. It lives in the quiet communication happening between your muscles and your brain. A constant, invisible conversation. Every single second of every single day, thousands of tiny sensory receptors embedded in your muscles, your tendons, your joints. They're sending signals upward, telling your brain exactly where your body is in space. How much weight is on each foot, whether the ground beneath you is soft or firm, whether you are drifting slightly to the left. Scientists call this proprioception, and here is the part that most people never hear about. After 60, this system begins to slow down. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually the signals become a little quieter. The response time stretches by just a fraction. And your brain, which has relied on this communication your entire life, begins working with incomplete information. That hesitation you feel on the stairs, that slight wobble when you turn quickly, that is not weakness. That is a communication gap. And here is where things get genuinely fascinating. Because unlike bone density or muscle mass, which requires significant effort and time to rebuild, this sensory system, this proprioceptive network, responds remarkably quickly to the right kind of gentle, consistent stimulation. We're talking days, not months, not years. The researchers found that adults in their late 60s and 70s who began a specific daily movement practice showed measurable improvements in balance and body awareness within just 2 to 3 weeks. And the habit they were practicing wasn't strenuous. It wasn't complicated. Most participants described it as almost meditative. But before we get to what that habit looks like and exactly how to do it in a way that actually works, there is something important you need to understand about why most balance advice fails people over 60. Think about the last time you searched for balance exercises online, or maybe a doctor mentioned it briefly at the end of an appointment. Heel-to-toe walking, standing on one leg, maybe some resistance band work. These are not bad suggestions, but there's a reason so many people try them for a few days and quietly stop. They don't feel like they're working. And when something doesn't feel like it's working, especially when you're already feeling uncertain about your body, it is very easy to give up, to assume that maybe this is just where you are now, that maybe the window for change is past. But that assumption is wrong, and the science is very clear on this. The problem isn't the person. The problem is that generic balance exercises miss the deeper issue entirely. They treat the symptom without touching the root cause. They ask your body to perform, without first rebuilding the communication system that makes performance possible. Think of it like this. Imagine trying to drive a car across a city while your GPS has a weak signal. You might get somewhere, but the journey is uncertain, tense, full of small wrong turns. Now imagine that same drive with a perfect, clear signal. Suddenly everything is smoother, more confident, more automatic. That is exactly what happens in your body when you target proprioception directly. When you give your nervous system the right kind of daily input, the signal gets stronger. And a stronger signal means a steadier, more confident, more independent body. And what researchers found, what quietly stunned even the most skeptical physicians in these studies, is that this kind of neurological recalibration doesn't require intensity. It doesn't require pain or exhaustion or a complicated routine. It requires consistency and the right kind of movement, done in a specific way, for just a few minutes each day. We're going to show you exactly what that looks like. And we're going to explain why each piece matters, so that when you try this for yourself, you will understand what your body is doing. Because understanding is what turns a habit into a lifestyle. But first, there is one more thing you need to know. One piece of this that almost no one talks about, and it may be the most important part of all. There is a village on the southern coast of Japan, a small, quiet place where the pace of life moves differently than almost anywhere else on Earth. The streets there are narrow, the mornings are slow, and the elderly, people in their 70s, their 80s, some well past 90, move through their days with a steadiness that stops visiting researchers in their tracks. Not because they are exceptional, not because they have access to advanced medicine or specialized equipment, but because of something woven quietly into the rhythm of their daily lives. Something so ordinary that outsiders often walk right past it without noticing. They stand, often, and in a very particular way. Researchers from Kyoto University who traveled to study longevity communities across Japan began noticing a pattern that appeared again and again. The oldest, steadiest, most mobile members of these communities shared a set of small physical habits, daily rituals that were never framed as exercise, never thought of as health interventions. They were simply part of life. But when scientists began measuring the physical effects of these habits, studying muscle activation, neurological response, postural control, what they found was remarkable. These small, quiet movements were doing something profound to the nervous system. They were keeping the proprioceptive pathways active, sharp, responsive. They were, in effect, maintaining the communication system between body and brain that so many people in the Western world quietly lose after 60. And the most powerful of these habits was something that can be done anywhere, in your kitchen, in your living room, while the morning light comes through the window and the coffee is still brewing. It takes almost no effort to begin, but the effect it has on your balance, your steadiness, your confidence in your own body, that builds steadily day after day in ways that are both measurable and deeply felt. Here is what this habit looks like, and more importantly, why each part of it matters to your body specifically. It begins with standing, not standing still, not standing and waiting, but standing with intention. Researchers describe this as active stillness, and the difference between standing passively and standing with awareness is greater than most people expect. When you stand with your weight distributed evenly between both feet, not leaning into one hip, not gripping the floor with tension, but simply present and balanced, your proprioceptive receptors immediately begin firing. They begin sending information, and your brain, receiving that information, begins recalibrating. Now here is where the habit becomes something more. Once you are standing with intention, feet roughly hip-width apart, eyes forward, shoulders easy, you introduce a small, slow movement, a gentle weight shift, moving your body's center of gravity forward slightly, then back, side to side, in small, controlled arcs. It looks almost like nothing from the outside. Someone walking past you might not even notice. But inside your body, something significant is happening. Every small shift challenges your balance system just enough to activate it without overwhelming it. Your ankle stabilizers engage. The deep postural muscles along your spine wake up. And your brain, receiving a steady stream of clear, detailed sensory information, begins strengthening the neural pathways responsible for keeping you upright. A research team at the University of Pittsburgh studying fall prevention in adults over 65 described this process as resensitizing the balance system, and their findings were striking. Participants who practiced this kind of mindful weight shifting daily for 3 weeks showed significant improvements in what researchers call dynamic balance, the ability to stay steady not just while standing still, but while moving, while turning, while navigating the unpredictable terrain of everyday life. But the habit doesn't stop there, because standing and shifting is only the first layer. The second part involves your eyes. And this is where things get genuinely interesting. Most of us rely on our vision far more than we realize to stay balanced. When your proprioceptive system is strong and sharp, your body uses vision as one signal among many. But when that system weakens, when the messages from your muscles and joints become quieter, your brain begins leaning on your eyes to compensate. This creates a hidden vulnerability. Because the world is not always perfectly lit. Floors are not always even. And there are moments stepping outside at dusk, moving through a dim hallway at night, waking and walking to the bathroom in the dark, when your vision cannot give your brain what it needs. That is when falls happen. So the second layer of this habit gently, progressively trains your balance system to function independently of vision. Not by removing sight entirely, but by reducing your reliance on it, incrementally, in a safe and controlled way. You begin by softening your gaze. Instead of focusing hard on a fixed point ahead of you, you allow your eyes to rest, unfocused, relaxed, and you continue your gentle weight shifts with this softer visual input. What this does is quietly shift the processing load. Your brain, receiving less sharp visual information, begins drawing more deeply on proprioceptive signals. And those signals, being stimulated by the movement you're doing, begin to strengthen in response. Over days of practice, this recalibration becomes more automatic, more embedded, and your body begins to trust itself in a new way. Physical therapists who work with adults recovering from falls describe watching this shift happen in their patients. This moment when someone stops bracing against their own movement and begins to move with ease again. It is, they say, one of the most quietly powerful transformations in rehabilitation work. The third layer involves time on your feet in the natural world. And the research here is worth pausing on. A study published in the journal Age and Aging followed a group of adults between 62 and 78 over a 6-month period. One group continued their normal daily routine. The other group added a single daily habit, a short, unhurried walk on uneven natural terrain. Grass, gravel paths, gentle slopes, nothing extreme, nothing that required special fitness. The results separated the two groups in ways that surprised the researchers. The walking group showed not only improved balance scores, but also reported higher confidence in their movement, less hesitation on stairs, less fear of open spaces, and perhaps most meaningfully, a measurable reduction in what researchers call fear of falling. That quiet anxiety that shadows so many people over 60 and quietly shrinks the world they are willing to move through. Because here is something that does not get discussed enough. The fear of falling is not a small thing. It changes behavior in ways that are both understandable and deeply damaging. People stop walking as far. They stop reaching, bending, navigating. And in doing so, in trying to protect themselves from falling, they actually accelerate the physical decline that makes falling more likely. It is one of the great, cruel paradoxes of aging. And this habit, this gentle daily practice, is one of the most effective ways to interrupt it. Not by ignoring the fear, but by giving your body real reasons to feel safer. Real evidence gathered one steady step at a time that your balance system is working, that your body is responding, that you're not simply at the mercy of time. And when that evidence begins to accumulate, when you notice that you stepped off a curb without thinking twice, or turned quickly without that flicker of uncertainty, something shifts in you. Not just physically, but in the way you carry yourself, in the way you inhabit your life. There is one final piece to this habit that researchers have only recently begun to fully appreciate. And it connects everything together in a way that feels almost too simple to believe. But the simplest things are often the ones that last. There is something that happens when a person begins to trust their body again. It is not dramatic. It does not arrive all at once. It comes quietly, the way most meaningful things do, in small moments. A steadier step down the porch stairs in the morning. A reach across the kitchen counter that feels easy and automatic. A walk through the grocery store without that low hum of caution running beneath every movement. And then one day, you realize the hum is gone. That is what this habit is ultimately about. Not statistics, not clinical measurements, not even balance in the purely physical sense. It is about reclaiming the freedom to move through your life without fear sitting quietly in the passenger seat. And the final piece of this, the part that researchers have only recently begun to give the attention it deserves, is perhaps the most human piece of all. It is rest and breath, and the nervous system's deep need for both. For decades, the conversation around senior health and mobility focused almost entirely on the physical. Strengthen the muscles, improve the joints, work on coordination. And while all of that matters deeply, something was missing from the picture, because balance is not purely a muscular event. It is a neurological one. And the nervous system does not operate in isolation from the rest of your inner life. Researchers studying chronic stress and its effects on aging bodies have found something that should change the way we think about falls and unsteadiness entirely. Adults over 60 who carry elevated levels of chronic stress, even low-grade, background stress that never quite becomes acute, show measurably reduced proprioceptive sensitivity. The communication pathways between body and brain become noisier, less precise. The signals that should be clear and immediate arrive slightly distorted. Think about what that means in practical terms. Two people, same age, similar physical condition, but one carries tension in their body through most of their waking hours. The other has found ways to regularly settle their nervous system, to breathe slowly, to let their muscles release. Over time, those two bodies will respond very differently to the same challenge. The same uneven sidewalk, the same quick movement on the stairs. Not because of strength, but because of signal clarity. This is why the most complete version of this daily habit includes a moment, just a moment, of intentional breathing before you begin. For slow counts in through the nose. A brief natural pause. 6 slow counts out. It sounds almost too simple to matter. But what this breathing pattern does physiologically is measurable and significant. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It reduces the low-level noise that stress creates in the body. And it prepares your proprioceptive system to receive and process information more clearly. Athletes call this centering. Meditators call it grounding. But for adults over 60, working to rebuild balance and bodily confidence is something more specific and more practical than either of those words suggest. It is tuning the instrument before you play. So let us bring all of this together, because the habit we have been building through this conversation is now complete. And when you see it whole, it is remarkable how little it asks of you and how much it gives back. You begin with breath. 4 counts in, a pause, 6 counts out, twice, perhaps 3 times, until you feel something in your chest and shoulders soften. Then you stand with intention. Feet hip-width apart, weight even, eyes forward but soft, and you begin your gentle weight shifts. Forward and back, side to side, small arcs, slow and controlled, allowing your body to find and re-find its center with each movement. You continue for 2 to 3 minutes. As your comfort grows over days and weeks, you will naturally begin extending this, adding small progressions, perhaps rising slowly onto your toes and lowering back down, perhaps adding a soft head turn while maintaining your balance, perhaps closing your eyes briefly, only if you're near a wall or a counter for safety, and noticing how your body responds. And then, when the weather allows, you step outside. Not for a long walk necessarily, not for anything strenuous, but for 10 or 15 minutes on natural ground. Grass if you have it, a quiet path, a garden, anywhere your feet meet a surface that is slightly varied, slightly alive beneath you. This is not exercise in the traditional sense. It is something older than that, something your body was designed for and has simply been waiting to return to. The researchers, the physical therapists, the longevity scientists, they will give you measurements. They will show you the data on postural sway and reaction time and fall incidence rates. And the data is genuinely compelling. But numbers are not why people keep doing this habit. People keep doing it because of how it feels. Because there's a particular kind of confidence that comes from a body that knows where it is in space, that responds without hesitation, that moves through the world with something approaching ease. It is a confidence that is very difficult to describe to someone who hasn't felt it, but it is immediately recognizable to anyone who has spent years quietly compensating, quietly bracing, quietly shrinking their world to match their uncertainty. When that confidence begins to return, even a little, it does not stay in a body. It moves outward, into decisions, into plans, into the willingness to say yes to things that fear had quietly been whispering no to for years. A walk with a grandchild on an uneven trail. A trip to a place you have been telling yourself you'll go to someday. A morning in the garden that lasts longer than you planned because your body simply felt good and you did not want to stop. These are not small things. These are the texture of a life lived fully. And they are available to you, not someday, beginning with the next few minutes of your day. You do not have to be the person who watches the years narrow the world around them. You do not have to accept unsteadiness as the price of getting older. The research is clear. The path is simple. And your body, right now, at whatever age you are reading or hearing these words, retains a remarkable capacity to adapt, to strengthen, and to surprise you. Begin tomorrow morning. Before the day asks anything of you, find a quiet moment. Breathe, stand, shift, and trust the process. Because the body that carried you here is not finished with you yet. If this felt useful to you today, we would love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us, what is the one moment in your day when balance feels most challenging? Your answer might help someone else who is quietly going through the same thing. And if you want to keep receiving content made specifically for where you are in life right now, consider subscribing to Prime Wellness. Every video here is made with one purpose: to help you move better, feel stronger, and live more fully in the years ahead. We're glad you are here. This video is intended for general informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Always consult with your physician or a qualified healthcare professional before beginning any new movement or wellness practice, particularly if you have existing health conditions or concerns related to balance, mobility, or fall risk.